Growing up in Ohio, I am not a stranger to weird things. We have everything from UFOs and aliens at Wright Pat Air Force Base to 4.5 foot tall frog creatures up in Loveland. And I thought I knew almost every weird tale and urban legend my state had to offer, but boy was I wrong. On June 19th, 1929, a man was found dead in a ditch in Sabina, Ohio, and he wouldn't be buried until 1964. This man was never positively identified, but he was given the name Eugene by local law enforcement. That name was given to him when a scrap piece of paper from the dead man's pocket had an address on it, and next to that address was a still living man in the house named Eugene. The backstory on Eugene seems to vary depending on who you talk to and what you read, but from what most of the stories have in common, Eugene was a presumably homeless man who showed up in Sabina looking for work. After a few days of no luck, he died of natural causes according to the coroner. Sadly, that's all that's really known about the man who would become a staple for a small 2,500 population town for the next 35 years. Eugene was embalmed at the Littleton Funeral Home and was then displayed in a small adjacent brick building. Ohio is such a weird state. The funeral home claimed that they did this in hopes that someone would recognize him and later give him a proper burial, but shortly after, Eugene became a popular spot for buses traveling from Cincinnati to Columbus to stop, and fast forward 35 years and Eugene was still a local tourist attraction as well as a target for the occasional high school prank and collegiate kidnappings. But each time Eugene was taken, he was always returned to his quiet showcase. A quote from a frequent visitor to Sabina named Marjorie Ray describes what it was like to see Eugene fairly well. This is what she had to say. When I was a child, my sister and I used to visit our great aunt in Sabina, Ohio. She lived across the street from the Littleton Funeral Home. We played with a little girl who lived at the home, and we used to play in the coffins and were always fascinated by the body on display out in the small brick building out in the yard. Eugene is what they called him. His body was laid out on a platform behind bars so you couldn't touch him. We were children and didn't think much about why he was there, but we made many visits to him. I remember staring at him for long periods of time because he was just so interesting to look at. We had not experienced death yet to anyone we knew and didn't fully understand what death was. We didn't have much to do, and where else could you go to look at a dead body up close? Eugene would finally be buried in 1964, but to add further insult to injury in this case, the tombstone read found dead in 1929, but he was actually discovered dead in 1928. It would appear that the pranks consistently pulled by locals are what caused Eugene to finally be given a proper burial. A popular prank for seniors to play was to steal Eugene's body at the end of every school year, and one time Eugene even ended up nearly 54 miles away in Columbus, Ohio, on the Ohio State University campus. And even though to the kids this is all in good fun, there was a lot of public outcry for Eugene and the disrespect surrounding him. Now, learning about Eugene, it really got me thinking. Why are we so fascinated with death? Personally, from a young age, I was always drawn to the darker side of our strange existence, and something about exploring the unknown always fascinated me. I also can't help but wonder, had I been a kid growing up in Sabina, Ohio, how often would I have visited Eugene? Now, if anyone is interested in paying their respects, Eugene's grave is still accessible in the Sabina Cemetery, and coins and trinkets are often spotted on the headstone from visitors stopping by to pay their respects. But I do ask that anyone visiting, please be respectful and courteous, and please only visit for the right reasons. So who was Eugene, and why was the town of Sabina so fascinated with him that they would publicly display him for nearly 4 decades? Honestly, I have no idea, so I think for now, for tonight, we're going to have to add Eugene the Ohio Mummy to our never-ending, always growing Tales from the Dark